Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Rabbi shrah sadri wa yassir li amri wahlul 'uqdatam min lisani yafqahu qawli. Welcome everybody to our first Sunday talk. So actually this is the first time we
Recording in
arrange
progress.
Sunday talk here. Alhamdulillah, together with us we have Prof Asad Zaman here. So inshallah Professor Asad Zaman will give a lecture about the topic, the deadliest weapon, fabricated history. So actually this talk and this topic is related and as part of the Ghazali project. Later on, inshallah, Prof. Asad will tell us the Ghazali project and how is actually this topic related to the project. Before I hand it over the platform to Prof. Asad, I would like to share about the background of Prof. Asad. For those who are coming from Islamic economics, of course, already familiar with him. For those who are coming from other disciplines, Professor Asad Zaman was graduated from MIT Mathematics for the bachelor and take a statistics in master from Stanford and economic from the same university, Stanford. He previously taught economics in Ivy League University and also former vice chancellor of BPA in Pakistan. So, inshallah, he will share to us the topic. For those who are having a question, you can write down the question at chat box, or maybe later on after the professor give lecture, you can raise your hand to have a direct interaction with him. Okay, without further ado, I will hand over the platform to Prof. Asad. The floor is yours, Prof.
All right, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Thank you, Lisa, for inviting me for this talk. And let me just dive into it. Let me just say to begin with that this talk is very important. What we are going to discuss today is something that you will not have heard before. And if you understand what it is, it will change your life. It's not something very simple or very easy to understand. It is not like a talk about differential equations or history. It's actually about our lives. This talk is about what you and I think and how you and I act on the basis of what we think. So let me just start. So
Hello?
is my screen visible to everybody according to the screen share?
The screen? You can see the screen? Yes.
Okay. So, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. So what we are going to talk about is how history has been manufactured and how this is used to control our minds. So basically, we all live in countries which have been colonized in the past. And so one thing that we don't understand about this colonization is that it was not done by force. Although yes, there were some armies and there were some fighting, but the large majority, there was only a very small number of colonizers and a very large number of people. So a large number of people cannot be controlled except by mind control. So we were taught to believe in the power of the colonizers, and that is why we did not revolt. And similarly, in capitalism, you see today we have about 50 people, they own half of the wealth of the planet. So what's 50 people? If we didn't want them to have this wealth, we could take it away from them. There's billions of people who don't have. The bottom billion lives on less than $2 a day, which is below the poverty line. So if there's 1 billion people, they can do a lot of things, but they don't. Why not? Because we are not because we don't have the power, but because we don't have the will. Our minds don't have the right theories. And how that happens, this is the subject of this talk is So the thing is that we are going to discuss about how minds are controlled by history, but this is not talk about just any old man, Mr. Smith and Mr. Black. It's about you and I. Our minds are being controlled. And so if we understand what is happening, we will understand how to free our own minds from the chains that we have been accepted without our conscious awareness. So there is this famous book by Noam Chomsky called Manufacturing Consent. He says that in democracy, you see, if you look at the USA, everybody votes, but they all vote for Donald Trump, who is the big millionaire. So they don't vote for poor people like themselves who will help the poor. They vote for the rich. So how does this happen that the vast majority, the bottom poor people, they end up voting for the rich man who puts more taxes on them and makes the rich people even richer? So this is all because of mind control. So if you so the goal of this talk is to understand how our minds are shaped, and then it's not just theory, it's about practice, how we can free ourselves, how we can become independent thinkers. And then I think most of you probably saw The Matrix, about how people's minds are shaped by this electronics, and some people become free and then they try to free other people. They wake them up from their pods and their dreams and they bring them into reality. So this is kind of what this talk is about, that our minds have been fed manufactured ideas, and once we unplug ourselves from this, then we can learn to think freely for ourselves. So you must understand, the first thing is that we have to adopt a meta perspective. You have to rise above the battle in order to understand what is going on. So we are now going to detach ourselves from our own personal lives. I am like this and I am like that and I had this education and I have this job. No, we have to look above as an outsider, as an alien. Let's think that I am a Martian and I'm looking from above the sky onto this planet, and I'm looking at all the people walking around in their daily lives, and I'm asking, what makes these people behave like they do? So I am one of those people, but now I am not thinking from the point of view of the personal life. I'm thinking of the big picture. So that is what it means to say that the meta thinking. So if we look at what's happening on this world, we will see that there are lots of interest groups, lots of people who want to do some things, but nobody can do anything by himself. In order to do something on this planet, you have to have a group. So you create groups by giving them a common interest, a common agenda. And that happens by telling them that, look, this is a very important problem and you should be part of the solution. So when we buy this, then we became engaged in this effort. So it's not just one group or two groups, there are lots of groups, and they are all of their battle is about shaping the hearts and the minds of the people. So we are part of those people whose minds and hearts are being shaped. So what George Orwell saw in this novel 1984 is very close to the truth, that basically, what is power? You see, we are used to thinking of power as being in terms of atom bombs and armies and physical manifestations of power. But that is not where the power is. In fact, thinking that the power is in the bombs is a big mistake, because it prevents us from realizing the source of power. It's not the bomb, it's the one who manufactures the bomb and uses the bomb. So you have to look at the person behind the bomb. So basically, power lies in shaping minds. And so what he says is that, you see, if you control the minds, they will never rebel against you, because they will never become conscious of who they are. and they cannot become conscious until they rebel. So this means that you're trapped. Unless you start a rebellion, you will not become conscious of who you are. But you will not start a rebellion because you will never become conscious. So the only thing that we have free is a few cubic centimeters inside our skull, but this is under the control of others. So what he says in the last quote, that basically we have a choice between freedom and happiness. See, if we don't revolt, if we accept the picture that everybody is following, accept the path, then we will be content. We are just like the ordinary people, and we follow the same thoughts, and we think and act in the same ways as everybody else, and it makes us happy. We are part of the crowd. If you break free, then you realize that, oh, my whole life is an illusion. Everything that I have thought, which I thought was my own thought, was actually a planted thought. So then you become unhappy because you are now apart from the crowd. You realize that you have been manipulated. You realize that all the power lies in the hands of others. You don't have much power to change things. So it's not a very happy. It's better to go back and be a sheep, become part of the crowd. Forget about the fact that you're being manipulated. And if you remember, this is also what happens in the Matrix. One of the people who is woken up, he wants to go back to the original illusion. So we go back to the beginning of the fabrication of history, and this begins with early Christian tradition. There were, you see, when you start with the history of the church, you find that there are many different groups with many different doctrines. There are the Arians and the I don't even remember all the names of all of the Christian groups, but they were fighting each other, and they said that, you know, I have the true doctrine, and the other person said that I have the true doctrine of Christ, Isa alayhi salam. So how did they do this? How did they carry out these battles? By manufacturing the writings. So the Gospel according to Peter, this is not written by Peter. Gospel according to Falan, Gospel according to Falan, Thomas. So if you in 300 years later at the Council of Nicaea, they had this stack of large numbers of books written by XYZ, all claiming to be authentic, and they burned most of them, and they kept, because they were all in conflict, they were contradicting each other, and they kept just a few. But all of this literature was fabricated. And also in our Hadith we have examples of people. Lots of
doesn't have any sound, Iman.
Hello? Can't you hear me? Are you having problem in listening, Lisa?
No, Prof. We can hear your sound.
Okay. So, so basically, even in our own hadith, we had lots of fabricated hadith. People were trying to support their opinion, and then they would manufacture a hadith to say that this was said by, you know, Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, so that his opinion would be supported. But fortunately, this is what the task of the muhaddiseen was, that they sorted out and they tracked the chains, and they found out that yes, this is the true hadith, genuine hadith, and this one is fabricated. So there was a huge amount of activity to correct the hadith. So we have the collection of the 6 Sahih hadith, which is basically about 600,000 hadith chosen from much larger collection of fabricated hadith. So in our tradition, the fabrication was discovered and eliminated. But in the Christian tradition, the fabrication became the source of the religion. So even in the Bible, you have examples of people who lied, and then but they are all defended. They are not said. It is not said that it was wrong for them to lie. And Martin Luther, who was the former of the Protestant church, he said that a good lie is useful for the Christian, and so you can lie if it is necessary, if it is useful for the Christianity. But this is so strongly against the Quran. The Quran says that you must tell the truth and you must be for justice, even if it is against your own self or your own family or your friends. So Allah Ta'ala is concerned with the truth. So don't follow your desires. So the standard that we have for justice and truth is much higher than the one in the Christian Bible. So now I want to, one of the philosophies of life that we have been trained to believe in is materialism. Materialism means that only the material things matter. So we think that it is the guns and the bombs and the technology and the science. These are the things which are important. But this is not true. What is important is what goes on inside the minds of people. You see, this is the opposite of materialism. It's our ideas. Our ideas are not material. Why they are not material? You see, even in the West, they believe that the ideas are also material. But this is not true. See, I have one idea now, but I can have another idea just 1 minute later. So the idea moves at faster than the speed of light, which means that it is not material. So when we think, because we have been trained to be materialists, we think that if I ask you what is the kind of world you live in, then you will think of the world I live in is made out of mountains and rocks and stones and rivers and oceans and buildings, things like that, the material things. But this is not true. We live in a world of ideas. If you think about the world that you live in, I live in, I ask you, what is the nature of this world that we live in? Then I will talk about the world wars. There were 2 world wars in Europe, and then there was the global financial crisis recently. So lots of things. But if you talk about those things, the East Asian crisis that took place, that was very important for Indonesia, because all of the important things became cheap, and then the foreigners bought them up, and they still control those powers. So how did all this happen? Well, you see, we did not actually witness these. We did not observe any of these events. So these were reported to us in newspapers. In the newspaper, it was written that this is what is happening and that's what is happening. So how it is narrated is what we learn about history. It is not, we don't directly participate, but the picture of the world we have is dependent on the way the story is told to us. So if the story is told to us that the East Asian crisis happened because the Indonesians are lazy and corrupt, and they have this crony capitalism system, and they did not play by the rules of capitalism, then we will believe this, that yes, it's all our fault. But if we learn a different story, that this was the goal of the global financial markets to break the prosperous economy of Indonesia, because Indonesia was not allowing them to make the profits from their economy by investing. So they opened the gate, they forced in huge amount of foreign capital, and then they withdrew all of this at once to cause a collapse and crisis. And once this collapse and crisis occurred, then they were able to invest in Indonesian. They were able to buy up Indonesian business and property very cheap and make huge amounts of profits. So this is a very different story from the one that is in the newspapers and in the economic articles. So depending on which story you hear, you will have a different idea about the nature of the world we live in. So once you understand this, then you have to realize the history we know, is this true history or is it just all propaganda? If it is all propaganda, then we live in a world of illusion. We live in a world in which everything we know about the world is just a manufactured false fact. There is no truth. So then we are living exactly in the matrix world, where all of the ideas we have were manufactured by other people to make us live in a reality which is different from the truth. So what is the source of our indoctrination? What is this wire that is inside our brain which programs our mind? So this wire is the Western education that we all have. And so you have to look, as I said, you have to look above, beyond, not the direct lessons. What did you learn? You learned chemistry, physics, biology, mathematics, history, political science, economic science, etc., etc. But that's not what you were really learning. You have to look at the meta lessons, the bigger lessons, which were not in the books that you were taught. The meta lesson that you learned, which nobody actually ever discussed, is that all important knowledge was created by Europeans in the past few centuries. Nobody ever told you this, but look at what you were taught. Look at the university syllabus. All it has is the books of the Europeans, either maybe translated into your language, but everything, all of the knowledge that you were taught in the university, it was manufactured in Europe. So what is the lesson, the meta lesson from this? That, okay, everything valuable was invented by Europeans. Because you are never taught about Imam al-Ghazali, you are never taught about Ibn al-Haytham, you are never taught about Razi, Ibn Sina. No, those people are obsolete. Any knowledge that they have is no longer important. So another lesson that you were taught is that knowledge is valuable only if it allows you to get jobs. If I teach you poetry, well, yes, this is fun, but not important. Why? Because you can't get a job by this. So this is another lesson of your Western education. This is not true, but it is part of the education. Another lesson which is taught as a meta lesson, not directly in the books, but something you understand automatically, is that Europeans are the most intelligent people on this planet. They are rational, they are scientists, they have high standards of living, they have justice, they have good governance, they have democracy. And in the contrast, we are very inferior people. We are not very intelligent, we are not very rational, we don't have any science, we have low standards of living, we have corruption, we don't have democracy, we are inferior. And so what must we do? We must learn from Europeans in order to progress. So all of these are part of the lessons of the Western education that we receive. So I cannot break all of these illusions in one. I will just concentrate on just one idea. And I will explain how this idea is fabricated. There are 1001 wrong ideas in our brains, and I will just look at one of them, but this is the root one. So according to European history, which we all learn without any direct teaching, there is something which was called the Enlightenment. It is like the spreading of the light. So we all know that Europe had dark ages, and then somewhere in the 16th, 17th century, suddenly the Europeans started to think and reason for the first time in the history of mankind. According to the standard Eurocentric history, nobody in all of the planet, no human being had learned how to think before. People were just thinking traditional thoughts. They follow their way of their parents. They don't think for themselves. So in Europe, for the first time, people started to think for themselves. And then they started reasoning, and then Descartes was the founder of Western philosophy. He said that I think, therefore I am. So he puts the thinking at the heart of existence. And so this was the first time that thinking became important. And then very soon you got Isaac Newton's Principia Mathematica, which showed how you can use reason to figure out how the universe works. Everybody else thought that, God was running the show, but Principia Newton told us that it is basically all natural law. It's mathematics which runs the show. So then once the Europeans started to learn how to use science and mathematics, then they figured everything out. All of the useful knowledge that we know today comes from the Europeans. And so once the Europeans became so very advanced, they were like in the skies and we were in the jungles. So they said, oh, look, we have gone so far ahead of the rest of mankind. Now we must go and educate everyone. So they realized that they are the only civilization, everybody else is barbarian. So they went out and conquered the whole globe in order to civilize us, to educate us, to train us, to give us the science, to bring us the benefits of their advanced civilization. So this is the story of the civilizing mission of the Europeans. Why did Europeans conquer Indonesia? Because they wanted to help Indonesians, not because they wanted to capture the wealth. So the first task, if we want to break the chains, is to unlearn this history of the world is called Eurocentric, because basically it says that there's only Europe. Nobody else is really part of history. History just means European history. If you look at the world wars, it's basically the wars of the European powers. It was England and Germany and France and America, which is also descendants of Europe. So basically the rest of the world, we were not part of it. So it's a world war because it's European war. We are just innocent bystanders. So one of the claims of Eurocentric history is that the European Enlightenment occurred spontaneously. It happened all by itself. And why did it happen? Because the Europeans are unique. They have this ability to reason. They have creativity. They have rationality. They have science. They have justice. Every good thing is part of the European. Initially, it was justified as race, because the white race can do this and no other race can do this. Then later it shifted to culture. And now, once the Europeans started to think, then the mankind progressed and made tremendous, rapid, fantastic progress. So basically, the past few centuries of Western leadership have been very, very good, amazingly good for all of mankind. And all of mankind has benefited enormously from the science and technology developed by the Western civilization. So these are all the central claims of Eurocentric history. These are all wrong, but we have been taught to believe that they are true. So basically, we can't explain all of these illusions. We'll look at just one of them. How did the European Enlightenment happen? How did it happen that the Europeans are the most richest countries in the planet, and everywhere else we have hunger and poverty and malnutrition? So we will see that the origins of these enlightenment have been concealed, and this idea that European enlightenment took place all by itself is a fabrication. It is a deception. It is a deliberate deception, not just that it's false, but it has been deliberately distorted. We have been taught lies for a particular purpose, to deceive us about the nature of history. So once we believe these lies, then it becomes hard to understand the message of the Quran, because according to the message of the Quran, enlightenment occurred 1400 years ago when Allah Ta'ala revealed his final message to mankind. And what was part of this message? That all human beings are brothers and sisters, when we are sons and daughters of Adam and Hawa alayhi salam. And what was the impact of this message? The ignorant and backwards Bedouin who were living in the desert and very simple people, they became the leaders of the planet. Their ideas dominated the globe. And so the message says that Allah Ta'ala is the Noor of the heavens and the earth, and that He will lead people out of darkness into the light. So now there is a real problem and a conflict, because on the one hand, the Quran is telling us that the Quran is the Noor and Allah Ta'ala gives light, and on the other hand, the Europeans are telling us that no, Europe is the Noor of the heavens and earth, and they are the ones who created the light. So to understand how this happened, we have to realize that it was the light of Islam which ended the dark ages of Europe. So this is the key message for this talk. But there are many other things that we need to unlearn. But this is the first step, that the European Enlightenment did not occur spontaneously. It occurred because the light of Islam reached Europe. So this is very important, and this has been suppressed deliberately in the history. So how did the Dark Ages start? This is very important to understand. So basically, Dark Ages of Europe started when Christianity became the state religion. And so when the Christian emperors took power over Rome, then they suppressed all things that were against Christianity. So there was lots of philosophy, lots of mathematics, lots of other things in the Library of Alexandria. But none of this was in the Bible, so they just burned down the library. And Christianity, they issued edicts saying that anything, any book which says anything against Christianity must be burnt. And they took anything that they took many things to be against Christianity which were not. So they didn't have any concept of neutral knowledge. So basically, Christian book burning and censorship was applied to all types of knowledge. Anything that's not in the Bible, just burn it. So Pope Sylvester wrote a book on how to use the abacus. You know, abacus is like, counting stones. So basically, that was the level of mathematics that they had in the Roman Empire, that they learned how to count by stones. At the same time, Muslims were doing algebra and polynomials and root finding and calculus. So the Dark Ages was created by the suppression of knowledge by Christianity. And contrast to this, the central message of Islam is that it's all about knowledge. That this world, so you see, the message starts by saying, "Iqra bismi rabbika alladhi khalaq." So it says that read in the name of the Lord, and then Adam alayhi salam is taught the names of things, and the malaika make sajda to him. And the hadith says that the ink of the scholars is worth more than the blood of the shahada. Seek knowledge from cradle to grave. So basically, Islam is a religion of knowledge. And so at that time, when the Islamic light of knowledge spread, Muslims were very advanced and the Europeans were barbarians. They had no knowledge. The Christians were burning libraries, and the Islam was making the Baghdad House of Wisdoms. They were importing paper from China. They had paper factories in Baghdad, and they were making huge numbers of books. They had 600,000 books in the library of Qurtuba. Then there was interaction of Europe and Islam due to the Crusades. And I noticed that I'm going very slowly. I need to speed up a little bit. So in the Crusades, these were basically barbarian. There's a pattern which Ibn Khaldun has described, that if you have an advanced civilization, it becomes very luxury loving and it becomes less able to fight. And so the barbarians invade and they get all of the important things from the civilization. So Al-Andalus was 700 years old when it was destroyed by the Christian barbarians. And when they took it, they captured the huge library at Toledo in 1085. And so basically, one thing we don't realize today, because we have soft copies of books, is that libraries are the hard disks of civilization. The book contains knowledge, and if you destroy the book, you destroy the knowledge, because there is no other record. That is why Allah Ta'ala talks about IQRA bismi rabbika allazi khalaq khalaqal insana min khalaq. That allama al insanu ma lam ya'lam, allam bil qalam. So the qalam is very important in recording the knowledge and passing it on. So the dark age of Europe began when they erased the hard disk, the great library of Alexandria, and basically the dark ages ended with the translation of books in the Toledo library, which was captured in 1085, and the mass translation began in 1125. So that is when knowledge started to come back into Europe, and that was the beginning of the end of dark ages. So basically, very important historian Henry Pirenne, he says that Europe is actually a creation of Islam. The Europeans were just barbarians fighting among themselves. They got a united identity because they realized that there's huge civilization of Islam, and they have a different religion. And so basically the unity of Europe emerged, even the concept of Europe emerged in opposition to Islam. So this thesis, the Europeans don't like it at all. They have contested it very hotly, and they say, no, this is all wrong. But this is basically the truth, that Europe exists as in opposition to Islam. It only gets an identity as a common identity. Otherwise, Germans and French and British, they are always fighting each other throughout their history. Even now, they don't like each other very much. So now, when the knowledge started coming in to Europe from the Islamic civilization, the church had a big problem. How can we borrow knowledge from these people who we hate, who would say that these people are just very bad people, they have false religion, and they have everything they do is wrong. So now we are forced to borrow knowledge from them. How can we do this? So they invented history. They said, no, we are not borrowing from Muslims. We are borrowing from the Greeks. Now actually there's no Greeks. Anything we know about Greeks comes from Islam. There were no original books of Aristotle or Plato or anything. Everything that comes to the Europeans comes from the Islamic civilization. So they invented this myth, which is pictured, that there was Greek knowledge which was huge. In fact, Greek knowledge was very primitive. Most of the knowledge, it may have, in some cases, there are some original seeds in Greek thought, but the real knowledge is developed in the Islamic civilization. But they changed this picture. They said that all of the knowledge was had by the Greeks. Islamic civilization only carried the knowledge from Greeks to us. They didn't do anything by themselves. So whenever the Europeans talk about knowledge, for example, Descartes is supposed to be the inventor of Cartesian coordinates, the mathematics, the analytic geometry, which is still taught in schools. Who invented this? Descartes. No, it was invented by Muslim mathematicians. But either it is attributed to European inventors or to the Greeks. Muslims cannot get any credit for anything. So Jack Goody has written a book called Theft of History, and he explains how basically this is stealing. You take ideas from other people and then you say these are our ideas. And that is why when we get a Western education, we think every good idea was invented by Europe, because wherever it was invented, they take the claim for it for themselves. So there are lots of books now available which explain how European writers distorted history to make it seem like the only important history is that of Europe. Everything else, Africa, Latin America, Asia, these things don't, Australia, these things don't matter. These people are just no people. They are just ignorant barbarians. They know nothing. They did not do anything important in all their history. So this is all just fake. So one of the biggest questions about which you can find more than 100 books. People say, oh, look, Europe is very rich and everybody else is very poor. So why is this? This is a big question. So big books, some of these books say, the Europeans are bright, everybody else is dumb. They say we are lazy, we are dishonest, we are thieves, we don't respect property rights. This is all of the reasons for why we are poor and why they are rich. But there is this book, this one book, which is out of print and not taught. This book says, no, this is nothing like that. The Europeans went over the globe and they stole everything. When you see, if somebody comes in, two neighbors are living, one person comes into the house of the other, he steals everything. What will happen? The person who is a thief will become rich. The person whose property has been stolen, he will become poor. So it doesn't take a very big fat volume to understand why we are poor and why they are rich. Because they colonized us and they stole billions and billions of dollars worth of resources from us. So we are poor and they are rich. Doesn't require huge amount of philosophy to understand. So all of these books that I've been talking about, these are what you call internal critiques. Europeans themselves trying to understand their own problems. But there is also external critique. For this, Raju has developed some very important ones, and there are others as well. Looking at the European civilization from the outside, then you understand that their self-image is that we are honest, intelligent, smart, creative. This is all wrong. They have plagiarized from other civilizations. They have not understood the most important elements of the things that they copied from Islamic civilization. So when we look from the outside, we get much deeper insight than from the internal criticisms. So one of the books of Raju, very important, everyone should read, is Science Western in Origin. So he explains that science was actually an invention of the Islamic civilization. And he documents how the Europeans stole this idea. And they claimed it for themselves. Today, Max Weber says that science was invented by Europe. Completely false. So Ibn al-Haytham was the first scientist and he was the father of optics. Al-Ghazali was the first, and Ibn al-Haytham was copied by Newton and Descartes and many other Europeans. His books were actually translated and used in Europe for centuries. Al-Ghazali was copied by Descartes. Ibn al-Shatir was copied by Copernicus. Just direct copying, not understanding and copying, but just plagiarism. Galen was the medical person of the Greeks, but the real work was done by Ibn Sina, by Imam Razi, and by many other Muslims. But in Europe, when you study history of modern medicine, you say that Galen did everything, Muslims did nothing. And then mathematics, this was invented by Pythagoras and Euclid. All of this is nonsense. These are inventions of the Europeans. So just for, this is the book of Ibn al-Haytham, which was published in 1011 and translated to Europe in 1011. So this is he is the father of optics. This is there is no doubt about it. He discovered most of the fancy theories of optics which are taught even today. Even today, when you study optics, you are studying the theories of Ibn al-Haytham, but he is never mentioned. in the books. Instead, there is this book called Ibn al-Haytham, the First Scientist. But if you look at the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy today, you will say that the field of optics originated in Greek, like Euclid and Ptolemy. And this is just a myth. They didn't have anything to do with it. And then by Kepler and Descartes. This is actually a direct quote from today's Stanford Encyclopedia. There's no mention of the Muslims. Even though Ibn al-Haytham is the father of optics, and his books were used in Europe in 1000 in the 11th century. So they have erased the name of Ibn al-Haytham from history, and all his contributions are either Greek contributions or those of Kepler and Descartes, who came much later and who read his books. So this is just to explain how the fabrication of history takes place. Similarly, in economics, there is Schumpeter, historian of economics. He says that the Greeks had economic thought, and then there is a great gap of 500 years. For 500 years, when the Islamic civilization was at its dominance, there was no economic thought. People stopped thinking. And then again, people started thinking again when the Europeans started to think. So there is this great gap. So basically, all the contributions of Islam and Islamic civilization have been suppressed deliberately. So this is again a story of medicine, which is published in an article recently, and it says that Galen invented medicine. Muslims did not understand medicine, and their religion did not allow them to do dissections, so they did not do any dissections. This is just false. Actually, dissections, surgery, lot of things were invented by Muslims, but the Europeans have this false history which says that Muslims didn't do anything. So again, there is the story of Descartes. Now, very interesting story of Descartes, that he was actually an aristocrat. He was very bright, but he didn't have any training in science, mathematics. And suddenly, he writes that in 3 days, I had dreams. And after I am having these dreams, then he started writing philosophy. And then he wrote things which suddenly best of Europeans couldn't understand. And he was now became the inventor of Cartesian coordinates. He became inventor of philosophy. So many things come from Descartes. So suddenly, for 30, 40 years, he had no philosophy, and then suddenly he became a great thinker. How did this happen? Well, basically because he discovered a secret school of thought which was translating Arabic books. Why was this thought secret? There was this order called Rosicrucian order, and they said that we have some secret knowledge. And so basically he joined the Rosicrucians and he got a lot of secret knowledge. But why was this knowledge secret? Because the Europeans were persecuting this knowledge, and there was a order of the church in effect that nobody should read the books of the Muslims, and nobody should teach anything which is against the church or against Aristotle. So many people, including friends of Descartes, they were tried and tortured and imprisoned for thinking the wrong thoughts and reading the wrong books. So Descartes could not acknowledge his sources, and in fact he was also under the threat of heresy. Many times case was brought against him for teaching the wrong things and thinking the wrong thoughts. So basically they could not say that I have taken this from Imam al-Ghazali, even though he knew it. So when he copied Imam al-Ghazali, he was forced to say that this is my own thought. So this is why then we have Roger Bacon, and he describes how the actually the history of science, how the Muslims played a role, but but basically he again says that okay, we took Ibn Sina and Ibn Rushd, but Ibn Sina and Ibn Rushd were copiers of the Greeks. Now the thing is that our philosophers did not believe in naql. They did not copy the things of the Greeks. They took the ideas and then they improved them and they added to them and they made them the best possible. So basically the Copernican revolution is due to the Muslims. His model is a carbon copy of Ibn Shatir. So Descartes borrowed from Al-Ghazali, Copernicus plagiarized from Ibn Shatir, Tycho Brahe borrowed from Indian astronomers, Newton and Leibniz, who discovered calculus, borrowed from Indian mathematicians, algorithm and algebra from Al-Khwarizmi, Pascal's triangle from Al-Karaji. Even now today there is something which is called Penrose tiling, which was a mathematician. I think he got Fields Medal, very important. It's like the Nobel Prize in mathematics. But the Penrose tiling is part of Islamic architecture and design. So basically, Eurocentric history, now we are coming to the end of the talk. The Eurocentric history is designed to deny and conceal Islamic influence on European thought. It is designed to support the racist concept of European history. And what is surprising is that Ibn al-Haytham's philosophy of science today is better than the best philosophy of science available in Europe today. So if you look at philosophy of science, there is the most popular textbook by Chalmers called What is this thing called science? And basically they can't figure it out. Even though they borrowed science from Ibn al-Haytham, they never understood what it really is. Similarly, if you look at Al-Ghazali's philosophy in the Deliverance of Error, Deliverance from Doubt, this was copied by Descartes, but the Descartes copy is inferior to Al-Ghazali's original philosophy. So even now the father of European philosophy, Descartes, built on the wrong foundations. He didn't really understand what Al-Ghazali was saying. And this is a major problem because today all of the central ideas of Western philosophies are founded on a misunderstanding of Al-Ghazali. And this still needs to be corrected today. The problem created by not understanding Ghazali is still a problem in Western philosophy today. Similarly, Ibn Khaldun discovered the social sciences, and his methodology for doing social science is superior to the best methodology for social science available in the West today. So basically, what do we learn from all of this? Now we are coming to the end of the talk, is that Eurocentric history is deceptive and it is designed to deceive us. It is designed to teach us that we are inferior, we cannot think, we are not creative, we are not scientific. But and this is true even today. Today now the Europeans, we are discovering the Islamic sources, but they are continuing to deny that. They say no, Copernicus rediscovered the ideas on his own. He did not copy from Muslims. He made the same discovery once again. So this is just ridiculous nonsense, because you have two books, you compare them, they are word for word the same. So how can you say that he rediscovered? But still, you see, they don't want to even today acknowledge the influence of the Muslims. So basically the strategy that was used was that the Greeks, you see, you can read that, oh, the Greeks were very wise, they had so much knowledge. Why? Because all of the knowledge of the Islamic civilization is transferred back to the Greeks or forward to the Europeans. So the point is that this is not a dead and buried issue. It is not something that happened in the past and now we can forget about it. It is not that Muslim civilization discovered some things, but now they have all been taken over and absorbed by the Europeans, and now we must follow the Europeans. No. The discoveries of the Europeans, the philosophies of the Islamic civilization are still very important because they still have not been absorbed and understood by the Europeans. So basically, because we have been educated in the West, one of the things we have done is we have learned to trust the West. as a source of knowledge. We have been reading their books and studying their thoughts, and so we don't think that these people would deceive us. But this trust is not justified. Eurocentric history is a fabrication built on a deception, and we need to rebuild the whole foundation of knowledge in the past 3 centuries. Instead of starting from Descartes, we have to start from Al-Ghazali. Instead of starting from Newton, we have to start from Ibn al-Haytham. And so the West has told us that they are brighter, smarter, more honest, and they have all the good qualities, and we have all the opposite characteristics. This is all false and designed to shatter and undermine our self-confidence. If we believe that everything was done by the Europeans, then we will never become great scientists like those of our own intellectual. We will never become great philosophers, because we think that only the Europeans can do great philosophy and great science. But this is all false. So this is the last slide. So this leads to the Ghazali project. The first thing is deliverance from doubt. This is one of the books of Ghazali, Al-Munqidh min al-Dhalala, and which says that first we must put our full faith in Allah Ta'ala, that His message is the most powerful and the most important and the most complete and perfect guidance for mankind. So it is the Quran which is the source of all knowledge. The step 2 is to understand that the European knowledge, which pretends to be so wonderful, is full of errors and full of mistakes. And so once we understand that, then we have to, the third step, which is the most difficult, that we have to apply the knowledge of the Quran to rebuild the social sciences and also to rebuild the physical sciences from new foundations. So this is the 3 tasks of the Ghazali project. And so this is the end of my talk for today. And now we can open this up for questions and answers.
Okay, mashallah, jazakallah khair, Professor Dr. Asad Zaman, for the very inspiring lecture. So now I welcoming those who are going to ask questions. Actually, we have Brother Talang. Please, Brother Talang, you can unmute yourself.
Okay, so Assalamu alaikum, Doctor. This is Tahal Hussain from Karachi, Pakistan. My question is that, Alhamdulillah, you've talked about this, and you've talked about how we have been manipulated. There is one thing that I don't understand, that if you're talking about the fact that the credit has been taken away from the Muslims, we are in such big quantity. Islam is the 2nd largest religion of the world. Why is that? If this is taken away from us, and we have the proofs that they have manipulated, the Europeans have manipulated the history, why is it that through these proofs and all of it we can get those credits back?
Well, you see, this is what the thing is, that the power is created by manipulation of minds. So today, think about the Muslim world. What is being taught? Everywhere, 90% of the Muslims are going to Western schools and getting Eurocentric education. So their minds are all shaped. So 90% of the Muslims are thinking Eurocentric thoughts. So how can we take it back? Until we change the system of education. This is how handful, there was only 1,000 Europeans in India at the height of their European colonization. How can 1,000 people control millions and millions of population? It's by the process of mind control, by educating them to believe that Europeans are superior. So today the same process of mind control keeps the large numbers of Muslims in check. Our minds, so the first step is to liberate the minds.
Doctor, yes. Just to add to it, thank you so much. What do you propose, if you're talking about changing the education system, because I myself, my relation is with the education sector. I myself am a teacher as well. So what do you propose if you're talking about changing the education system? What is the route, or what is the primary subject or the course or whatever you may call it? Is that something that we should change or remove, and what is that we should add in the curriculum in the larger scale of what's going on in the Muslim world.
Everything has to be changed. Every single course that we teach has to be written from an Islamic perspective. The social sciences, they are all deeply Eurocentric. The physical sciences also need to be rewritten, because the physical sciences suppress the knowledge of God. They say that there are these laws which rule the universe and not God. When one of the scientists in the West, very famous man, he presented his book on astronomy to the Napoleon. Napoleon said that, Mr. Laplace, you have written this book about the movement of the stars and the planets and the suns, but you have made no mention of God. So why is that? So he said, sir, I have no need of that hypothesis. So this is completely ridiculous, because actually to explain the movement of the planets, you need God, because they are so well designed, so perfectly designed, that it cannot be by accident. Even the astronomers, even the atheists who are studying the movements of these planets, they say, if the Earth was 1 centimeter different from where it was, life would not exist. So how come, who placed the planet in exactly the right position to sustain life? So all of these questions, but they are never mentioned in the books of that we read.
Yeah.
So the physical science is designed to suppress knowledge of God, and the social science is designed to suppress knowledge of the Islamic civilization. So everything needs to be rewritten from scratch, because this is all Eurocentric knowledge.
And considering the rise of Cambridge system and the Cambridge education throughout the world, over here in Pakistan as well, we see in metropolitan cities, most of the people who can afford good education, they never go with the local education, they go with Cambridge system. So,
well, local education is just a cheap copy of the Cambridge system, so why would they go with it? It's all Eurocentric education, and that is the instrument of control.
That seems an impossible task, Doctor, right now, that we change the entire system.
No, it's not impossible. We are developing courses, online courses, and once you have these online courses, we will this is the instrument which can be used all over the world. The substance will be the same or better. Today I'm developing courses on economics and econometrics and macro, and all of these are far better than what is currently being taught, because once you understand the basis and the mistakes of the West, you see all of this econometrics that is being taught by West is garbage. And similarly, all of the economic theories is garbage, and we all know that. The global financial crisis occurred, and none of the economists could understand why. So it's just that because we are so much impressed by the West, that even if they tell us the wrong theory, we say amanna sadaqna. Of course, if it is coming from the West, it must be right. So it's huge amounts of garbage that we are absorbing, and this corrupts our minds.
Okay, thank you, Prof. Asad. Is it enough, Brother Talam?
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, so we can go to the second. We're going to ask Brother Ashraf. You can unmute yourself, please.
Go ahead, Ashraf. Ashraful Haq.
Yes, you can unmute yourself, Brother Ashraf.
I'm going to get a glass of water. Just 1 second.
Brother Ashraf, are you there?
I just come back. I came back. Yes. Now.
Are you listening? Are you listening?
Okay.
Yes. Now I'm here.
Yes.
Okay. I'm so sorry. I'm saying that we need to have YouTube videos regularly on this, so we can share, and we will need to have a Facebook. Number 2, I would like to understand more about this Al-Ghazali project. Number 3, as you said that which you need to rewrite. I fully agree the social science can be rewritten. I fully agree science can be rewritten, but I have a problem when you will rewrite economics. They will not agree because they will say that dinar and dirham cannot be because interest is the basis of economy. So they cannot change the economic thinking of interest. So, and you cannot have any ready-made model to show. So how? First two things, of course, we didn't change, but how can you overcome this economic hurdle? Thank you, Professor.
Oh, very good, Ashraful Haq. Let me explain that. Once you understand that the power, that knowledge is power, then you say they will contest. They will contest everywhere. This is a battle for minds and hearts. As soon as we start talking about education, they will start a counter campaign. Right now, we are just a small group of people. We have no impact. Once there is some impact, there will be a huge campaign that everything that we are saying is nonsense. That Asad Zaman is a crackpot. He's a lunatic. He is saying things which are completely wrong, and so on. There will be a very strong campaign to prevent the spread of these ideas. So it's best to keep it underground and silent for as long as we can, because this is the real game of power. It is not in the US does not exercise power by its armies. It exercises power by mind control, and mind control is created by the education system. So as you say, if we start fighting against interest, they will start fighting against us. So this is a battle. This is the battle which needs to be fought. How to do it requires strategy. We have to think about what are the areas where we can win and leave those areas where the enemy is too strong.
I understand.
Yes, Darshan.
I hope we can get your recording, and if it is in the YouTube, it could be good. We can share with people as well. Thank you very much.
Yes.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Ashraf. Actually, we will also already share in the chat room. Actually, we planned with Professor Dr. Zaman, we plan to have a Telegram group so that later those who are interested to involve further in the Ghazali project can fill in the form, and later on we can have a discussion in the group.
I give you my email address. You can email me.
Yes, actually, for those who are already registered using Zoom, we have already your email address, and later on we can share the recording of this session.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, welcome. Actually, we have several questions in the chat room, but I will give opportunity for those who are going to directly ask. For Brother Syed Arshad, please, you can unmute yourself.
Assalamu alaikum all. And Dr. Zaman, thank you for a very wonderful presentation. It's very thought-provoking, and definitely the idea of Eurocentrism is a very central and a very critical idea. I'm glad I joined this, and thank you so much for the presentation. I have the question that I have is a two-part question. One is historical, and the other one is right now about the strategy. The historical part is when you think all this was happening, when history was being hijacked and all this was under process, what was the role of the traditional ulema? Because I kind of fail to understand that there was definitely the golden period of Islam, and then after that as well, there was still a very strong tradition of ulema in history, but it appears like they don't seem to be playing any role when this is all happening. And especially if you look at in the history of the subcontinent, we have moves like Deoband, and we have many things happening, and we have Shah Waliullah, and we have many proponents of Islam and scholars, but none of this what you present seems to be like acknowledged by any of these people. So one part of this question is, how do you see this historically, that why was all this hijacking ignored by our traditional ulama? And the second part is that with regards to the Al-Ghazali project, where you think everything has to be redone and Eurocentrism has to be removed and rewritten, the whole history and all disciplines to be rewritten, then how do you see the role of contemporary ulema? Because all this discussion is regarding the Western universities, and obviously you can't expect the traditional ulema in the madaris to rewrite science, or let's say rewrite economics. It has to be people who are already familiar with all these Western ideas, and probably as well known as you, definitely, because you are in the middle of the whole econometrics and economic theory. But we don't have such people probably in sociology or psychology or other disciplines. So what role do you see of ulama? So once again, one is the historical part. Why, when this hijacking was happening, what were the traditional ulama doing?
Yes,
and the other is
your questions. You have asked very deep and difficult and critical questions, very, very pertinent ones. As far as the history of the decline of Islam, that is something that is very complex. Basically, one thing that we learn from the study is that things don't have single causes. It's not monocausal. So you have to look at the decay in multiple dimensions. But you can say that if you look at any civilization, if you look at Ibn Khaldun, they all have a period of youth and vigor and energy, and then they become mature and stable, and then they slowly become senile and decline. And so basically, in terms of this broad sociological picture, which was created incidentally by Ibn Khaldun, the concept of rise and fall of civilizations is due to Ibn Khaldun, and it was borrowed by Arnold Toynbee explicitly. He acknowledged the influence of Ibn Khaldun. The factors for decline and fall have been studied, and we can look into them. But the second question, but it is not very helpful to understand what happened. I mean, it was not very helpful in terms of trying to understand how to change. But the second question is very, very of burning importance, and that is that the ulama should have been the leaders of this movement to recreate knowledge on the basis of Islamic foundations. But they are not, and they cannot be currently, because after 1857, when Muslims lost the battle of freedom to the British, there was massive suppression of Islam in the subcontinent, and so basically they took a very defensive stand. They sheltered themselves behind walls and they protected themselves. So our ulama are about at least 1 century or more behind the modern times, and so we need to catch up, and so we need to train the ulama, and this is happening on a small scale because people like me who are familiar with modern knowledge but not with the traditional ulum are not sufficient for this task. We need not, I mean, there are two parts. One is to reject Western philosophy, but the second part, Ahya Ulumuddin, which means take the knowledge from the Quran and rebuild social sciences on those foundations, that requires the contribution of the ulama. So today it's like the blind man and the man who had legs and the other person who is lame. So the lame climbs on the shoulders of the blind man, and together they can walk. So it is like this. The people who are have Western knowledge like me, they don't have the foundations, the strong foundations of ilm that are necessary, and the people who have the strong foundations of ilm don't have the knowledge of the West that is necessary for this project. We need to create these people, and some work is being done. A lot more needs to be done. But the questions you are asked are absolutely critical. They are there of central importance, but they require a lot more work. Yes.
Thank you, Prof. Asad.
Thank you so
Actually-
much, Dr. Zaman. Thank you so much for your response. Definitely, we need to follow up on this. Thank you from Sydney.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Arshad. We will go to the next. We're going to ask Miss Brother Muhammad Hamdi. You can unmute yourself.
Assalamualaikum, Doctor. I am Hamdi from Malaysia. As a student who probably who will be going to the US in terms of like study for my degree, like what are the things that you would suggest us to do? Because I think from
Which subject are you going to study?
At this point probably economics.
You're going to study economics.
Yep. And like because you said from like the questions before, like you have to get like some knowledge from the West and also like the own knowledge from the East. So like recognizing like these biases, like this bias that I will probably face, what will you suggest to students?
You are going for a PhD in economics?
Oh no, I'm just doing degree.
Bachelor's or master's?
Bachelor's of degree. Yeah, Bachelor's of Arts, sorry.
Okay. So in bachelor's, you have a lot of room for maneuver and you can do a lot of different things. And basically, if you will read my writings or follow my videos, you will, they're pretty open-minded and they will be able to listen to critiques and to understand, because the self-confidence of the West has been shattered, so they are very willing and open to listen to critique, especially if it is done intelligently. They are aware of the idea of the fact that it's all Eurocentric knowledge, and they are aware of the fact that they have overemphasized the contributions of Europe and underemphasized the contributions of other civilizations. And they are not aware of the serious critiques, because basically no one can look at himself. So when you look at an outsider perspective, this gives a lot of insight. They appreciate that, because you can provide an external critique. You can look at them from the outside and tell them that, look, this is what you are, and if you do it properly, it will help. It will help them, and it will help you. So there are lots of things to be done, but I would just suggest that read my writings, go through my online courses to understand what you need to question.
Thank you, Prof. Asad. Actually, I'm not sure why your camera is off, so we cannot see your face. But your
I see.
Yeah.
My camera seems to be on. Yani,
yeah.
I don't have stop video.
Okay.
So maybe I stop video and restart.
Yes, maybe you can close the video and open again. Actually, we have some question in the chat, but actually we will prioritize for those who are going to directly ask in this session. So the question in the chat already we have forwarded to Prof. Asad chat. Later on, we planned to have a discussion group in the Telegram. So those who already asked but have not been answered in the chat, inshallah will be respond by Prof. Asad later in the Telegram. I will give opportunity to Sister Rabia. Please, you can unmute yourself.
Yes. Go ahead, Rabia.
Assalamualaikum. I'm Rabia from Lahore, Pakistan. I'm a student, and recently I just studied a subject named Philosophical Foundation of Western Culture. Basically, this subject was based on all those things that were forwarded to us from the West. But the professor we got, Alhamdulillah, was the person who took it the right way and tried to teach us what we need to learn, and he tell us what Western pretended to be and what it actually is. But right now the basic thing I want to ask. You just mentioned on the question of a person that we need to train some persons who have the knowledge of modern world and the traditional knowledge too. But why don't we just create a cooperation between the ones who have modern knowledge and the ones who have traditional knowledge? That will be much more time saving, and it's the need of our, and we need to do it right now, because it's already been 100 of years that we are being suppressed, and we need it to be done right now. And if we are not trying to do it right now, it's like to be taking another 100 years that we will train some kind of persons who will just praise themselves and try to create their impact as Muslims. So I just want to ask, why can't we just create a cooperation between them?
This is being done, yani, to the extent that it can be done. It is being done right now. You see, what we need to do it on a large scale. We need to create schools which will train students in both traditions, and also this is being done, but on a small scale. There are now madrasas in Pakistan which offer traditional training plus best Western training at the highest level. But these are now in elementary school level. Yani you can get up to 12 years of education. We don't have it at the university level yet, because you see, it takes 2 lifetimes of education to learn all of this. So it's not so easy to create cooperation. But to the extent that it can be done, it is being done right now. And as the efforts become more successful, it will be done on a larger scale. And alhamdulillah, this online education business has made it easy to take subject matter and to spread it over the globe. And so that will make it very efficient and fast, inshallah, very soon. We don't need to train a huge number of people, because when it's mouth to mouth and person to person, then it would have been impossible. But and it would have taken centuries. But today, even if only a few people have the knowledge, if they put it onto online courses, then it can be shared all over the world. So all of these things are happening today, and inshallah they will bear fruit with the help of Allah.
Thank you, Professor. Thank you.
There is another question that I quoted in the chat box earlier. That was the thing that West has also created a materialistic idea of progress in our minds. That's why when we think about progress, we think we need to follow West for a progressive future. But I think we need to be clear about the idea of progress, because when we think about Islam, or we just go through the studies of Islam, we don't see anything that Islam is only focusing on worldly progress or the world after here. There are both types of progress. So we must need to be clear about the idea. So I just want to just you to explain a bit that what do you think progress is? Because until we are not clear about what progress is, we cannot take steps to go towards it.
Yes, that's a very good question. I have several lectures on this idea of progress and development. And basically, actually, there's 1001 false ideas that have been planted in our minds. It's not just 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or 6. Progress is one of the central ones. And you see, in the European history, they colonized the whole world and they looted wealth from the entire planet. So according to their theory, the goal of life is to just maximize wealth. And this is obviously a false theory. But because we are trained in this way, it gets a hold on our minds and hearts. And we do have to cleanse our mind of this idea, just like we have to cleanse our minds of many, many other ideas. So I have covered these topics in other lectures. There's a whole set of lectures on how to launch an Islamic revival, in which I have 9 basic lectures which go through most of the false ideas.
Hello, Professor. Seems that Professor is having an internet issue. We have Pak Hendry Tanjung here. Maybe we will wait for Professor join in again. Assalamualaikum, Pak Hendry.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes.
Assalamualaikum. Sir.
Waalaikumsalam. I think Professor have an internet issue, so we will wait for him join in the Zoom.
Okay. I think this is a very interesting topic that I think every student should know about this. And especially for the PhD students, that they have to criticize what happened in the world, economy, and what happened to the Western economy.
Yes, we have
I'm
Professor
thinking,
here. Please, Pak Hendry.
hello, sir. Do you hear me, sir? Can you hear me?
Yeah, now I can hear you. I was disconnected and I just rejoined and reconnected.
Okay. Okay, sir. I think this is very interesting topic that I think every student should know. Every PhD student should know. Every master student should know about these topics. And I am thinking that for the future, we have to develop the genuine of Islam economics, that is Waqf system. What do you think, sir?
Please, Professor.
Yes, absolutely. You're right. The basis of you see, just like the institutions of a society express the idea of the society. So the spirit of capitalism is accumulation of wealth. Everybody should just maximize the amount of money they have, and so this the bank is the way to do that. In Islamic civilization, all of the money that we have, the extra that we have, we should spend on others. So that is the spirit of Islam. So that is expressed by the waqf. And when we spend on each other, this creates the love in the hearts for each other, and it allows everybody to progress at once. So instead of having 50 people who own all the half the wealth of the planet, a little bit is in the hands of everyone, and everyone can make progress together. So it's really a very powerful engine for growth. So yes, waqf is very important for the future of the ummah.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Now I'm working on it, inshallah.
I'm also working on it. I would like you to join our group, inshallah. Henry, you were such a young boy when I was teaching you. Now you have white hair. I am so shocked.
Inshallah.
Henry named his child after me when he was studying here in Islamabad.
Inshallah.
Now he sent me his picture of Asad Zaman. He is making hefs, mashallah.
Yes, sir, mashallah.
Thank you, Pak Hendry, for that response, and also later on we will inshallah have more discussion in the Telegram group, because the time is already, we almost end in the end of the session. So sorry for those who have not been having the opportunity to ask.
Hello. Can I request? Can I have Professor Zaman's email address, if you don't mind?
Oh yes, actually I have shared in the chat room.
No, just share me the email address, not the whole thing. Email address and number. I have to talk to Professor Asad Zaman personally, please, if you don't mind. Thank you.
Okay.
Sure.
Okay. So for the information, later on we plan to have a Telegram group. Those who are interested to join in the Ghazali project can fill in the form. The link have been provided in the chat room. So after you fill in the form, later on you can.
Ibu Lisa, boleh 1 menit?
Oh, silakan.
To Professor Asad?
Yes.
Yes, I just want to ask a simple question.
Yes.
Basically, who control our mind now? Please try to more make a narrow, let's say, a precise definition on it.
Basically, you see, the education we receive is what shapes our minds. So for 20 years, our we have been studying books which are teaching us Eurocentric philosophy. So they have shaped our minds. It's not specifically, it's an internal self-control developed by the ideas that we have absorbed without understanding that these are being fed to us. There is no active controller sitting and feeding us thoughts. It's our own internalized knowledge about the world that is controlling us. So that is why we can liberate ourselves, because there's no one who's pulling the strings. It is our own misconceptions about history which are controlling us. So if we if we learn the truth, then we can free ourselves.
Thank you, Professor. Maybe we have to end this session for now. Later on, inshallah, we will have another session, hopefully in the future. And for those who are, once again, for those who are going to involve in the Ghazali project, you can fill in the forms. Maybe before I end the session, I would like to give opportunity for Professor Asad Zaman giving one concluding remark for us.
Well, yes, as I said, people have asked my email, etc. All of this available, and you can join the group, the Ghazali group and the Telegram group, and all of these you will have access to my contact information, and you will be able to send me messages, any of the questions.
Yes, mashallah, once again, jazakallah khair for Professor Dr. Asad Zaman for sharing very inspiring lecture, and also already respond the question given by our brother and sister who joined this session. Also, jazakallah khairan, thank you for those who are joining in this Zoom, and also we are live streaming in the YouTube. Thank you for those who are already joined this session today. Inshallah, as mentioned by Professor Dr. Asad Zaman, we'll have another session, inshallah. And sorry for any inconvenience, and also we have to end the session. Thank you once again. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam.
Thank you, Lisa.
Ya, terima kasih Pak Henry. Jazakallah khair, Prof. Asad.